The most powerful queen England had ever known did not die peacefully in her bed. She died sitting upright, refusing to lie down, refusing to surrender. In the spring of 1603, a strange and disturbing story began spreading through the halls of Richmond Palace. Courtiers whispered about it. Servants refused to enter the chamber, and those who came near the door noticed something unforgettable. A smell. At first it was faint. Then it became impossible to ignore. Even perfume and incense could not hide it. Inside that locked chamber was the woman who had ruled England for almost half a century, the woman who defeated empires, the woman who survived assassination plots, rebellions, and religious wars. But now, she was losing a battle no army could fight. This is the story of the terrifying final days of Queen Elizabeth I, and the truth behind the death that shocked an empire. Before we step into her final days, we must understand who she was, because the woman dying inside Richmond Palace was no ordinary ruler. When Elizabeth I became queen in 1558, England was unstable, divided, and vulnerable. Religious conflict had torn the nation apart. Enemies surrounded the country on every side, and many believed a woman could never hold the throne for long. But Elizabeth proved them wrong. She ruled with intelligence, discipline, and an almost theatrical understanding of power. She knew how to command attention, how to inspire loyalty, and how to make her enemies fear her without firing a single shot. Her reign would later be called the Golden Age of England. Art flourished, trade expanded, exploration pushed England onto the global stage, and the English Navy achieved its most famous victory during the defeat of the Spanish fleet in the legendary battle known as the Spanish Armada. That moment turned Elizabeth into a legend. To her people, she became more than a queen. She became a symbol, the Virgin Queen, the protector of England, the woman who could never be defeated. But time defeats everyone, even legends. By the beginning of 1603, Elizabeth was 69 years old. In the 16th century, that was an extraordinary age. Many of her closest advisors were already dead. Friends who had stood beside her for decades were gone. The court had changed, and so had she. Those who saw her closely began noticing small signs. She ate less. She slept poorly. Sometimes she stared silently into space for long periods. At first, no one dared question it. The queen had always been unpredictable, but as winter deepened, something began to change. Servants noticed that she seemed restless at night. Some nights she refused to sleep at all. Other nights she paced the halls long after midnight. Her ladies-in-waiting began whispering that something was troubling her mind. Some believed it was grief. Others thought it was fear, because Elizabeth had one terrifying problem. She had never named a clear successor. When she died, the throne might trigger chaos, and everyone at court knew it. The first clear signs of illness appeared quietly: a fever, moments of weakness, sudden exhaustion, but the queen refused medical treatment. She had never trusted doctors, and she hated appearing weak in front of her court. So she kept working, meeting ambassadors, signing documents, listening to advisors, but those closest to her could see the truth. She was fading. By early March, the situation had grown alarming. The queen began isolating herself. She spent long hours alone, and then something unusual began happening. She stopped sleeping in her bed. Instead, she sat upright for hours, sometimes for entire nights. Witnesses later claimed she refused to lie down at all, as if lying down meant accepting death. Inside Richmond Palace, the atmosphere became tense. Servants moved quietly through the corridors. Courtiers spoke in whispers. Everyone could feel it. Something was wrong with the queen. Then came the smell. At first it drifted faintly through the stone halls. Some assumed it was spoiled food. Others blamed the palace trains. But the smell grew stronger, and it always seemed to come from the same place. The Queen's private chamber. Visitors approaching the door began covering their faces with perfumed cloth. No one dared speak about it openly, but everyone knew the Queen was dying, and whatever illness she had, it was not gentle. As Elizabeth weakened, the court began preparing for the inevitable. But politics inside the palace became extremely dangerous, because when a monarch dies, power changes hands instantly, and ambitious men were already positioning themselves. The leading candidate to inherit the throne was James VI of Scotland, but until Elizabeth confirmed it publicly, nothing was certain. Rumors exploded across the palace. Some believed factions were secretly plotting. Others feared civil war could erupt the moment she died. Meanwhile, the Queen continued refusing to lie down. For days she remained seated on cushions, exhausted, silent, watching the room, as if she was guarding the crown with her final breath. On March 23rd, the situation became critical. The Queen could barely speak, her breathing grew shallow, and finally, her closest advisors gathered around her bed. They knew the moment had come. One by one, they asked the question everyone feared. Who would rule England after her? At first, she said nothing. Then slowly, she made a small gesture, pointing north. Toward Scotland, the message was clear. She had chosen James, the future King of England. With that decision made, the tension inside the room began to release. But Elizabeth had little time left. Hours later, in the early morning of March 24th, 1603, the woman who had ruled England for 44 years took her final breath. Quietly, without ceremony, without witnesses beyond a handful of exhausted attendants, the Virgin Queen was gone. When news spread through the palace, something strange happened. There was no immediate panic, no chaos, only silence. Because the transition of power had already begun, messengers rode north. Letters were sealed, and soon England would have a new king. But the death of Elizabeth marked the end of an era of confidence, an era of drama, an era where one woman had held a nation together through force of personality alone. The Tudor dynasty that had ruled England for more than a century was over, and a new age was beginning. But historians still debate the mystery surrounding Elizabeth's final illness. Some believe it was infection, others suspect blood poisoning. A few even whisper about poison. The truth may never be known, because the records of her final days remain strangely incomplete. What we do know is this: the most powerful queen in England's history refused to surrender easily, even in death. And the legend of her final days still fascinates historians more than 4 centuries later. If you enjoyed this story about the dramatic final days of England's most powerful queen, make sure to subscribe for more hidden stories from history. And if you want another video revealing the secret plots surrounding the Tudor court, comment part 2, because the conspiracies inside Elizabeth's court were darker than most people realize.